In this year's election, people in Boston will vote for mayor and city council. With campaigns underway, there's also a conversation about the state of the city, especially in the race for mayor. Tonight, we hear from one of the challengers, the city councilor from Roxbury's District 7, Tito Jackson. Thank you very much for being with us, Councilor.
Thank you so much, Chris.
Well, before you started the campaign for mayor, you've been the councilor for a while, and people like I say, if they don't know you that well outside District 7, what have you done that makes you such a good candidate for mayor?
First, I want to thank the city of Boston as a whole for helping me. I was born at Boston City Hospital in 1975. I was there for about a month, and then I was in foster care for a month, and then an amazing Boston thing happened and by the way, I was actually born to a 13-year-old mother who was assaulted by two guys. That's how I got here. And an amazing Boston thing happened to me. I got adopted when I was 2 months old. So I literally owe everything to Boston. My father, Herbert Jackson, worked very hard as an entrepreneur and also helping to make sure that women, people of color, and Boston residents got jobs. And my mom, Rosa Jackson, I had a daycare for over 25 years. And that led me to this service. Today, I want to thank all of the folks from No Boston 2024 and No Boston Olympics. It is a 1-year anniversary from the day that I subpoenaed the Olympic documents, Chris. And so one of the things that I've helped the city with is ensuring that the city of Boston still stays financially viable. That would have bankrupted the city of Boston. Mayor Walsh had already signed on to the Olympics, and it was my subpoena that actually led a week later to one of the death knells for killing that deal. I've also been chair of education. And worked very hard to make sure that we fully fund public education and that we deal with issues like vocational technical education, which sadly this past year Mayor Walsh actually put forward a budget that will cut $455,000 from Madison Park Vocational Technical High School. But I stood with the young people last year, the 3,600 students who stepped up, and I'm very proud that we were able to get an additional $5 million, but I've been very strong on public education. And I also led the charge in Boston on a council for No on Question 2. In addition, I have helped to deal with the issue of paid leave for women and men in the city of Boston. I was one of the co-sponsors along with Councilor Wu, as well as with Councilor McCarthy. I also hosted the first ever council meeting inside a jail. I partnered with Steve Tompkins to listen to the voices of individuals who are going to be coming back into our community and put forward the idea, which has now been adopted, of an Office of Returning Citizens in the city of Boston. I'm very proud of my record, and I think one of the things I'm most proud of is Reclaim Roxbury, pulling together MIT and working with MIT as well as the Roxbury community with neighborhood associations and members of the community to determine what's our planning future for Roxbury. There's 1.2 million square feet of open land, and what direction is it going to go to, who gets to build on it, and how much of it is going to be housing that is affordable. Because I think we use this term affordable housing. 50% of people in Boston make $35,000 or less, and 75% of people in Roxbury make $50,000 or less. So it's really critical that the housing that we're building is actually in alignment with how much people actually make versus the federal guidelines. So I'm very proud of the record that I have as a city councilor, and really look forward to moving forward as the next mayor of the city of Boston.
As you said, you were born in 1975, and one thing I still remember about that year is that was maybe the last time a challenger made a strong contest against a sitting mayor. And of course, the last time we voted the mayor out of office was even before my time.
Yes, sir.
So you know that. Why are you running?
I am running because I have the best vision for the city of Boston. I'm running because we're a Boston that's leaving people behind. The city of Boston and the mayor's policies are gentrifying people out of the city of Boston. If you go to, not right up the street to South Huntington, and the new housing that they put there.
I can see that from my window, by the way.
Yeah, I'm sure, right? So I want to give a shout out to my friend Tory Bullock. So he put something on his Facebook the other day. It was a piece of paper that showed the new housing and how much it cost there. $2,200 for a studio, $3,200 for a 2-bedroom, and $4,200 for a 3-bedroom apartment. There are $2,200 studios in East Boston now, and places in South Boston is through the roof. We have the same issues in Roxbury, Dorchester, and Mattapan. The housing that is being built is not for the people who are currently in the city of Boston. And the Boston that I am putting forward is a Boston that's going to uplift everyone. We have a city that, an administration that was willing to give a $12 million helipad to General Electric. And I'm not mad at General Electric. Because it is elected officials and appointed officials that made that decision. The same night, Chris, was the night that they were proposing a helipad. The same night was the night that Mayor Walsh was closing the Mattahunt School. Unacceptable. If we have enough money for a helipad, then we have enough money for the students at the Mattahunt School, and at the Olympics and IndyCar. We have enough money for the Olympics and IndyCar. We definitely have enough money for the people who are displaced from Long Island. And to turn I can't say turn the lights back on at Long Island because we're still paying that bill, but to re-engage the efforts that were happening at Long Island. Folks were shoveled across a bridge within 4 hours and lived in really substandard facilities, 400 people in a gym that only had 2 bathrooms. That is a stain on the city of Boston, and some people passed away. People who were in detox came back into an open air drug market. We have, as a city, have to step forward and make sure that we take care of our homeless brothers and sisters and those folks who are addicted. And as mayor of the city of Boston, I will prioritize those people who have been left behind in Boston. And that is my sincere goal and promise.
This is Being the News, and we're talking with a candidate for mayor of Boston, City Councilor Tito Jackson. I want to ask you about housing, because the mayor just came out with these figures this week saying that if you look at the total production, that will swallow up some of the demand for housing, and you look at how much of that, he says 40% is for low or moderate income, and plus we have all this additional linkage money for affordable housing. I mean, isn't there something positive about that?
Well, we appreciate the additional linkage money, but the reality is in my office and also the Office of Housing Stability, the numbers are spiking. The numbers of people who are being displaced, and what his Office of Housing Stability actually says is that a $200 increase in housing prices are displacing families outside of the city of Boston. That's our city right now. Boston ranks in the top 3 in income inequality in Boston, and that's across race, right? So that's not only dealing with the very real issue that we have in terms of the disparity of race in Boston. This issue of housing is driving people out, and if the mayor doesn't hear that or is unwilling to hear that, then he is absolutely, completely out of touch with what I am hearing and people are feeling on a day-to-day basis. So what do we do about that? Yes, we need to increase housing production, but first we need to cut in half the Boston Planning and Development Agency. They are not planning. And they are simply allowing developers to run over people in neighborhoods across the city of Boston. I was recently in South Boston. They were proposing to knock down a 1,200 square foot Cape House to put 6 $1.5 million condos in that place. Who can afford that? And are we a city that is going to be like San Francisco? The city that Mayor Walsh is building is a city that's only going to have rich people and poor people and no middle class. And the reason why I'm standing up is because I am going to stand up for the middle class as well as poor people, and I'm going to raise the minimum wage to $15 an hour.
Quite a lot there. I want to ask you about one trade-off. Winthrop Square, the skyscraper that's proposed, yes, there will be more shadows in parts of the parks downtown, but there could also be more money for affordable housing, for some parkland maybe. What would you do with that?
Chris, Winthrop Square is, pun intended, the shadiest deal that I've ever seen in my career as a city councilor. It is a deal that mortgages the future of the city for this present. The present. This deal actually harms, and understand, I'm a legislator. I actually pass laws. That deal breaks a law, and then came back to the council to co-sign on breaking the law. What did that deal do? It was the BRA, the Boston Planning and Development Agency, put out an RFP that didn't even tell the developers that they were going to break the law. Break the law by doing this. They're saying that, oops, it was a mistake. Well, you know what? There can't be mistakes like that by city agencies. And then for us not to remedy it and to open a law, slip one through, and then collect money on the other side of that is absolutely unacceptable. Because, by the way, if Chris, you did that with say a deck on top of your house, if you were to say that to me, that would be considered shady business in the city of Boston. This is an unacceptable deal. And the sad part is, we're talking about affordable housing here. There are many other individuals who put forward, or actually companies who put forward a bid on that. Why did they choose Millennium? This can't be a city where the mayor gets to do the friends and family plan or picks winners and losers. That's wholly unacceptable.
We got to get some time in here for public safety here.
Yes.
I look at the police statistics. All categories of violent crime are down this year, but shootings are up by 30%.
And so, to me, and what the people in communities around the city of Boston feel the most are the shootings, and they are up. I want to give my condolences to the Cruz family, the store owner who was, we adoringly called him Chulo, who was killed in Mission Hill. I want to give my condolences to all of the folks who have lost someone. We have an administration that went into the summer with no plan, zero plan for violence prevention, zero additional funding for violence prevention. As mayor, I will walk in day one with a violence prevention plan, which will include 5,000 additional youth summer jobs, which will include 1,000 jobs during the school year, which will also include a more diverse police force, and it will also include safe street teams and hotspot areas in the city of Boston.
In fact, I know we're going to have to come back to this topic later, but about the schools, I know you also want more money for some of the programs that have been cut, even though the city's spending more money out of its own budget. Where would you get the additional money for these things?
So first off, the police department has a $60 million overtime budget on a $381 million budget. That is too high. And in fact, in my administration, we would actually have a longer, we would have more police officers, and we would actually be able to cut that number down drastically. I worry about our police officers, many of them who are forced to work overtime. So we would have some savings there. And I'm actually not saying that we need to raise additional revenue. What I'm saying is that we actually should be using the revenue in the right place. If we're giving away $12 million for a helicopter pad, if we can afford IndyCar, and if we can afford an Olympics, how is it that we can't afford our young people and the future of public education?
Now, finally, I got to ask you about some of those things you just mentioned, because the city walked away from the Olympics. I mean, the helipad seems to be at least not going forward, if not starting. So, I mean, is that really such a big deal now?
It's a big deal because Mayor Walsh is doubling down. He said that he would do the Olympics again. When it comes down to his administration is still saying that they believe that we should have a publicly funded helipad in the city of Boston. This is a budget is a value statement. It tells us where we stand. If you have a mayor who can't afford the public education system, and understand this year 49 schools were cut by $11 million. A school called the McCormick School in Dorchester was cut by $950,000 in this year alone. There are librarians that are getting cut, and we don't have a nurse in every school. 2 years ago, Mayor Walsh cut autism programs and increased the class size. This is a value statement about who and what we are. I, as mayor of the city of Boston, will value working families, will value public education, and will stand up to developers who are going to try to run over our city. We want to make sure that we're building housing that is affordable, and we redefine what affordability is, because most people in Boston, by the way, 50% of people in Boston make $35,000 or less. when we build affordable housing that's normally from 70 to 120,000, we actually miss out on building affordability for people who are making under that amount. We have a lot of work to do. I believe, as mayor of the city of Boston, I could bring us together. We can uplift us, and also we will deal with the issues of racial disparities, gender and pay equity gaps in the city of Boston. And as mayor, I will be the mayor that brings us all together and uplifts all of us in the city of Boston and not some of us in the city of Boston.
Thank you very much for being with us.
Thank you so much.
Candidate for mayor of Boston, City Councilor Tito Jackson.